Welcome to another episode of the Speak Black Woman podcast. I am super excited about our very special guest, but I know some of you have been rocking and rolling with the Speak Black Woman movement, and then those of you might be brand new to what is going on. So the Speak Black Woman podcast is for Black women in business who are also passionate about public speaking, or maybe just using their voice in every aspect of their business or their career. So what I like to do is bring you unique voices of Black women who have accomplished something, who have grown their business or advanced in their career. But the key thing remains is they weren't quiet doing it. They had something to say. So I want to make sure that as I begin to go through this movement, go through this journey, that I bring you other fabulous Black women who are not afraid to use their voice. Now, some of the women that I talk to have not always been as vocal, and we're going to talk about that as well. Some of them are definitely just getting started, and they are getting used to the sound of their own voice. Remember back in the day when you see the voice, I'm like, "Ooh, I sound like that." Like that's how people be thinking sometimes. So my goal, my job is to make sure that you are confident and we can tell your story, because something that you said could liberate somebody else. So our guest for today, I'm really excited about because I know her personally. I mean, she's my best friend, y'all. So I got to make sure that I create certain platforms that really kind of highlight various voices. But, you know, we're going to have a conversation about using your voice when the society or a mistake or decision could have silenced you, right? Because a lot of times if something happens, if something doesn't go our way, then we want to remain, you know, quiet or muted or muzzled. So Carin Seals happens to be my very special guest, and we're going to get to know her a little bit more in just a second. But here's where I want to start. Carin has a story of resilience. She has a fire. She has a feistiness. She has a resilience about her. And on December 22nd, 2020, her life changed for the better. And before we could talk about before what happened on December 22nd, 2020, we're going to talk about that, you know, what happened before and why that day was so special. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Miss Carin Seals to the Speak Black Woman podcast. Carin, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Hi. Good afternoons. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. All
Good
right.
afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm loving the hair. Got the lashes on. I said, okay, out here looking all glistening. Okay,
Look, I'm glowing. I'm glowing.
glowing out here. Yes. So let's talk about this. So something monumental happened on December 22nd, 2020. You mind telling people, you know, what happened on that day that was so monumental in your life?
Yes. So on once like you stated, I'm Carin Seals. On December 22nd, 2020, I was released from federal prison after serving 10 years of incarceration. And it was like 2 days before Christmas, well, 3 days before Christmas, and it was just a monumental moment.
Yeah, you know, we definitely kept in contact, you know, over the years, and I've always seen you've always been very vocal to me. Like if you don't like something, you do like something, you always use, you know, your voice. You know, was there any part of that time, which is, you know, a very vulnerable situation to be in, when you felt like you lost your voice? And the reason why I'm asking, because this is a Speak Black Woman podcast, so I'm always talking about how we as Black women need to use our voice. Was there a time where maybe during those 10 years that you lost your voice and then you found it again? But did that ever happen?
Yes, it did. It happened actually several times. I felt as though I lost my voice when it came to my daughter, my child. You know, she's 7 weeks old when I left her, and to not be able to make like decisions about where she was going to stay, her stability, about, you know, her whereabouts, her school, just the littlest things. It felt like it was like, you know, taken from me. I had to surrender and just accept what was being done and who was raising her and how they raised her. And, you know, it was, even if it was different from what I agreed upon, it was just like I had to accept it. So I felt voiceless in that situation. I felt voiceless when it came to like the prosecutor and how he spoke upon me, and just reading over the documentations. Like every time I submitted a paperwork to try to get out of prison early, he always came back, and it was just like defamation of character to me. And it's like I really couldn't even have a voice and say I'm not that person. And it was just like I felt so voiceless in that situation. You know, when it came to the guards and how they spoke to you, you had to just, you know, accept it. Otherwise, there's going to be consequences. So it was another time when I felt voiceless.
No, that's interesting. And thank you so much for being vulnerable. But I feel like you are a resilient person. Like you might be down, but you don't stay down. So what happened, or were any type of events that occurred that gave you the confidence to get your voice back? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we all go through the period where we lost our voice, but let's talk about what happened that you were able to regain your voice and be able to speak and do certain things. Did that happen when you were still in, or did it happen when you came home?
It happened when I was in. I must say, once I got peace with the situation and like peace with God, of my understanding and just being and knowing that, God is real and He's going to pull me through. It like gave me like a peace and let me know like, okay, you do have a voice even in this situation, and I will write and journal a lot. And I would still like, put in my opinion, whether they took it or not, I still would give my opinion. I would still, counteract what the DA said about me. So I say between like halfway through my incarceration, like the 5th or the 6th year, after going through all the guilt, the shame, and just beating myself up, I finally got some acceptance and say, hey, this time cannot do you. You have to, put your big girl panties on and do this time. And my mom always said, we're going to do this time one day at a time. And I had to take a look at that and do this time one day at a time, and one day at a time, get my voice back.
No, that's good. And, I know we started here, but we're not going to end, here. And, a lot of people have various stereotypes and misconceptions about people who go to prison, right? But I want to shatter that, because I feel like before that happened, you college educated, you got a good head on your, I always say you're book smart and you're street smart. So it's just like, who was Carin before that? Because I think sometimes society wants to label us or give us an inmate number, but I know that your heart is big. You're a super loyal person. You'll give the shirt off your back. Like, let's talk about, just kind of reshaping that story, that the prosecutor wanted to paint of you. Talk about, who you are now and what you want, like maybe the next 10 years of your life to look like.
Correct. You said it so perfect. I was always a go-getter. I was always the determined person, always eager to learn more. And that's what pushed me to, graduate high school, graduate college, land a corporate job. I just never gave up. When people said no, or, where I came from, what I came through, I just always used that as like my pushing tool. So it's pretty much like the next 10 years, like, in the future, I just want to use my voice for those who are still incarcerated, and to know that you can make a poor choice in life and bounce back from it, and not allow it to define who you are. And it's like what you do after you come out of prison, that right there gives people, open their eyes to, hey, there is rehabilitation when those who go to prison and make a poor decision when they're in their early 20s or so, and they come out here and they're doing things to better themselves, better others, encourage them, uplift them. And that's pretty much where I am. I want to remove that stigma, that stereotype that people have of those who is incarcerated, felons, you would say, and let them know that we are human beings. We fell short. Everybody's one mistake away, one poor choice away from landing where I landed. And that's what my ultimate goal is, to just pretty much have a face to the rehabilitation aspect of prison.
No, that's good stuff. And again, thank you for, it's so funny because I'm so used to like being very like just me. Now it's like this interview, so we gotta be like, oh, okay, you know what I mean, like in this little box. But I'm just proud of you, because when you came home, you hit the ground running. It wasn't like, oh, let me kind of get it together. Like you came home and you done some amazing things. So you started Triumph Through Tragedy, which is geared around young men and women who have lost a loved one in a form of tragedy. You also have your own t-shirt company, and you're also a future author, Reflection of Doing Time, Fundamentals. Like you got some good things going on for you. So tell me, what is Triumph Through Tragedy? What's that all about? Give the listeners a little bit of insight on why you are leading that and why that's so important.
Okay, so Triumph Through Tragedy is a non-profit organization in the works. We're not officially the 501c as of today, but the paperwork is in the process. But it's geared around helping young men and women who may have lost a loved one, a family member, anyone through any form of tragedy in life. It was birthed, Triumph Through Tragedy was birthed because my brother, Brandon Sills, he was brutally shot and murdered on July 13th, 2011. So through that, it's like my mom was pretty much saying like, hey, even though it was a tragedy, we're still going to find triumph. We're still going to have joy. We're still going to celebrate his life. And since the day he died, even at his funeral, it was a celebration of life. And unfortunately, I was unable to attend the funeral, but I did see the funeral on DVD, and it was just like you had to be happy, and you smiled, and it was just celebration of his life. So that's where Triumph Through Tragedy came from. And then with me going to prison and being away for 10 years, it was like, hey, that's a tragedy. That's something that affected my child when I left her, my friends, my family. So it is an impact that other children are going through as well. So, and it could be like deployment. I looked at that as well, like fathers and mothers who have to be deployed. Children,
Mm.
that's a transition that they have to make. So it's any form of tragedy that someone may be going through. And we're just trying to just help young men and women just know that there is still life after this tragedy. Even though you may have lost your loved one, do not give up hope. We just want to encourage them to keep going, to expose them to life outside of, a small town where I'm from. Just expose them to a bigger city, to colleges, do college tours, mentorship programs, seminars. Just give them some type of hope to hold on to in the loss of their loved ones.
No, that's good stuff. And you're right. And I'm glad that you're doing that. And sometimes we don't know why God takes us through certain things, but maybe you're supposed to leave that movement because maybe you wouldn't be as passionate about it if you didn't go through it. Right. So I think that, you're definitely a person that can like lead the charge and keeping your brother's memory alive, but also showing people like, listen, just because you might have made a decision that you're not proud of doesn't mean that your life is over. So I love the fact that, you're doing that and you have some other things kind of, going on as well. Again, like as soon as you came home, you hit the ground running. It was like, I got this t-shirt line, you was vending. I mean, like you were literally out here, doing some amazing things. And all my friends were like, dang, this girl ain't no joke. I'm like, I could have told you that. She ain't playing with nobody at all. So for those of you who are just joining us, we're having a great conversation with Carin Seals, and we're talking about how she went from, voiceless to vocal in her life. And she's been through some things like we all have, but she's okay with sharing the story, especially if it can prevent another young man or another young woman from, avoiding some of the things that she did. And of course, this is a Speak Black Woman podcast. And if you didn't already hear, the Speak Black Woman book is now available. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Target online. So if you want to patronize or be a part of the Speak Black Woman movement, you can actually purchase the book. If you want me to autograph it, you got to buy it directly from me. And that is at speakblackwoman.com. However, some of y'all like Prime, y'all want it the next day. You ain't getting the next day from me. If you want it the next day, you can go ahead to Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Target. I would appreciate that because if you know anything about me, I am always about making sure that Black women are seen and heard in every aspect of their business or their career. So, Carin, I am coming back to you because you're doing some great things. And I know that you have, you talked about the nonprofit in the making, which is Triumph Through Tragedy. And you're also in the process of, writing a book. What can people expect when you write that book? Like, where they're going to flip through the pages and learn what? And why? Why a book? I mean, you could have did a play, you could just be a speaker, but why are you deciding to kind of put some of your life into a book for the world to see? Because that's what's going to happen, when that book is birthed.
Correct. Ever since I was about 16, I journaled. And that was my way to express my thoughts, my feelings, because in my household, you really couldn't verbalize how you felt without being too grown or just being out of line, being disrespectful. So my mom gave me a journal, and I just wrote all my thoughts, feelings, everything I felt. So I carried that with me throughout my adult life. And while I was in prison, I journaled. I journaled majority of my incarceration. incarceration, all my thoughts, my feelings, what I liked and like, how, this was going on with my daughter, what was going on inside the prison, just anything that I felt. And when I go back and look at what I journal, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I made it through that. I can't believe that I don't feel like that today. I can't believe I felt like that at that moment. So it was like a reflection upon what I've been through. And when I look at, coming, growing up from, growing up as a young age, as parents who were addicts, being raised by my nanny, my maternal grandmother, just being, growing up on a drug infested street, being odds against me, teen pregnancy, just all the things that was thrown against me for me to not succeed and for me to succeed, it was like, oh wow. But what I learned along that journey is if you don't have a solid foundation, if you don't have like if you're not doing it for you wholeheartedly, because everything I did in my life, and when I was that age, young age, it was for my family. I want my nanny, who was already passed away, to be proud of me. So everything I did for someone else. So it was like when I made it to success, I didn't know how to embrace it, because it was like, I'm doing this, but I don't really have a passion for this particular job, but I'm doing it because that's going to get me the money and that's going to get me the praise from my family. So when I pretty much lost focus, I fell hard, and I just gave up on myself. I gave up on life. I just didn't feel like my life mattered, because I worked so hard to succeed and for everyone to praise me. And then it's like when I made that poor choice at that moment, is like I was like, who am I? I lost who I was, because the whole time I never knew who I was. I was in the shadow of what everyone else wanted me to be. So this book is pretty much just going to just expose that. Expose, what I've been through, how I overcame it, and how I was able to look back and say, dang, I was strong. And people say, you're strong all the time. I'm like, if you only knew. And I just want someone else to be able to know that even if you are going through something and it may seem dark right now and the storms, it's just like, oh my goodness, when is the sunlight going to come? Like, I'm just tired of going through a storm after storm after storm. And I just wanted to be that living proof that the sunshine is going to come and you're going to smile again. If not smile while you're in the storm, knowing that it's going to get better. And that's my hope that people gain from the book that I write.
Yeah, no, that's so, thoughtful. And I just commend you for even talking about it. I think a lot of times when people go through a tragedy, whether it's incarceration or a breakup or a death of a child, a death of a loved one, we often don't want to talk about it. But I always say, like, what you talk about, like, your voice is going to be connected to somebody else's liberation. You speaking up is going to prevent somebody else from making, that decision. So we're actually coming up on the 30-minute mark. It's always goes so fast. What types of, because you definitely, in my opinion, you're a champion, you're an overcomer, you're resilient, you're definitely strong. But what about someone right now who might be listening to this podcast and maybe they had a tragedy? Maybe they are coming home from prison. Maybe they are getting over bankruptcy. Maybe they were homeless. Everybody has their own tragedy, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but any words of wisdom for them to see that there is a brighter side coming and how they can just kind of stay mentally strong through that? Because I don't know everything, but I know there are some things that like almost took you out, but you persevered. So do you have any insight or words of wisdom for anybody else who could be listening, who went through a traumatic situation and they about to give up? They're like, F this, I'm over it. Y'all can have this in this life. What would you say to them?
I would first say that you have to get spiritually grounded. Like, you have to. Like, that's like the number one like brew, I would say. Because without having that spiritual foundation, you're just pretty much going to crumble.
Mm-hmm.
But also having a positive support group. And some people say, I don't need friends, I don't need this, or I don't have to have this, but you have to. You have to have at least that one person in your life that you can just, hey, call to and just call up and vent to, because that's what got me through a lot of my times when I just felt like giving up. I just had someone feeding that positivity back into my spirit. And this person has to be spiritually grounded as well to give it right back to you. And, you know, be like, oh, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. But sometimes you just have to just listen. And sometimes the other person just have to listen as well, because you're just betting like, hey, I just need this moment. But I just want them to know that I promise you, if you make it through the next day, things are going to get better. Like, you may feel like giving up at this very moment. Things may not seem like it's going to get better. But my mom always say, baby, just get on them knees and you pray, and I promise you, you make it through the next day, it's going to be better. And every time that I did that and I made it to the next day, it was better. It got better each day. But I just really want that person out there to know that I'm living proof that there is not anything that God will put on you that you cannot handle. And I know it's so cliche-ish, but it's just the truth. It's the truth. It is the truth. He definitely, you know, we go through these tests and trials to build our character, you know? And I just get so emotional because back when I was going through what I was going through, I didn't want to hear it. My mom was like, pray. I'd be like, God can't help me through this one. No, not this one. Not this one. He can't help me. I'm really in deep, Mom. He cannot help me. But when I just kept on, even if it was just a small little prayer, like, okay, God, thank you for waking me up. If it was something so small, it still let me know, like, okay, I believe. Even though I may not say it or I may not express it to my mother. I didn't express it to my mother at the time, but I did believe. And I held on to that mustard seed, like they said, of faith, and that carried me through. So that is what I can honestly give to the audience, Quinn, is you gotta hold on to your faith. You have to be spiritually grounded in this world right now.
That's good stuff. No, good stuff. You just guys heard from Carin Seals. Now, if people are like, oh my gosh, I love her, I want to connect with her. Do you have a website or social media page? How do you want people to connect with you if they want to learn more about Triumph Through Tragedy, or if they just want to be connected to you and just follow your journey? Where can they learn more about you?
Okay, well, we recently launched the website triumphthroughtragedy.org. That is www.triumphthroughtragedy.org. And that on that page is pretty much give you a just a background of Brandon Seals, of what he, you know, who he was as a person. It will also keep you updated on any events that's coming up. We have an event coming July 13th, 2021. Sorry, I'm stuck in the years. That's going to be in Lancaster, PA, the Reservoir Park. That's just going to be just 10 years. 10 years he's been going. So we just want to celebrate his life and just have, you know, food and just activities just for everybody to come out and just have a fun day. I also have Instagram, and that's Carin Seals, and my Facebook is also Carin Seals. My last name is Seals, Seals.
Okay, perfect. Well, Carin, thank you so much for sharing your voice with us. I appreciate your vulnerability. I know that by you speaking up, you're going to really kind of prevent some other people from just thinking twice about some of the things that they do. And I love what you're doing with Triumph Through Tragedy, as well as your t-shirts. So when this book is ready, we'll have to have you back, or I can share with your book on my network so you can get some support as well. So again, thank you so much. Go ahead. Stay on for a second. I'm just going to move you back down. I'm going to close out. Okay. All right, y'all heard from Carin Seals. As you can see, I do my best to find Black women who have voices and stories to tell, not just in corporate America or in business, but absolutely positively in their lives. So again, if you haven't already done so, make sure you go to your iPhone, go to your Android, type in Speak Black Woman in the podcast section, subscribe. And if you like what you heard with me or Carin, make sure you leave a comment. If you want to stay connected and learn everything that's going on with the Speak Black Woman movement, make sure you go to speakblackwoman.com. As always, my name is Quinn Conyers. It's been my honor, my pleasure, and my joy to serve as your host of the Speak Black Woman podcast. Until next time, have an awesome and amazing day.